An early settler on the New York State frontier wrote to his wife back east. "We find our land to be very good. It's well watered, and I think there is no difficulty in getting a good living here. I've got a good garden cleared and begun to clear summer fallow."
These buildings were carved out by these settlers, and they actually made the building and they worked in the building. And unlike our log cabins, which they lived in, which are all gone, these thrashing barns are still here. When you step into one, it's like stepping back 200 years.
In 1789, Benjamin Avery moved from Groton, Connecticut to claim his land grant in the new military tract of New York State. This is the story of an English threshing barn built on one of his farms 3 miles northeast of King Ferry, New York. A building that today stands on the grounds of the Genoa Historical Association, restored as a museum of pioneer farm life.
This is really an Americanized barn. You'd never find a building like this in England, but they were always called English thrashing barns. Mainly, I think, because it came from New England. They were developed in New England in the probably during the 18th century and a little bit of the 17th century. Every thrashing barn was divided into 3 parts, and rarely were they equal. You had your center area of the building, which was the thrashing area, and on one side you'd have the mow, which was usually the largest bay of the barn, and then on the other side, which would be the smallest bay of the barn, you'd have your stable and granary with a little loft over the stable and granary for storage, and then, of course, the removable loft poles over the thrashing floor. If you had a heavy harvest, they'd have these loft poles that you could set in and actually put harvest on overhead. But they'd always have the thrashing area set up so it was open during the winter, because that's when they would go through and thrash out the sheaves of wheat. They'd always have 2 doors on each end of the thrashing floor. If there was a breeze blowing, they could open up the doors and winnow their wheat or grain and let the chaff blow out the doors. The original floors, we know, were tongue and groove or splined, so they could thrash the grain on it, and the fruit wouldn't drop through the floor. Only in the last 150 years that we've gotten away from dealing with all this by hand. That's one of the that's why I consider these buildings so important. It's a direct link with a pioneering heritage that we don't have anymore.
We were trying to find a barn representative of the early threshing barns when this area was settled. So we'd been searching over the course of a year and surveying some of the early barns in the area, just to find the characteristics of the barn, how the timbers were put together, bent typologies, which is how the bents are laid out, the timber work in the barn, how it's laid out.
In 1991, the searchers came upon the barn that Benjamin Avery had built nearly 200 years earlier. A metal roof, probably installed in the 1930s, had protected the frame from the effects of weather during the last half-century. The barn's modern-day owners, the Colgan family, donated the structure, and work began. In the process of stripping the siding, workers discovered clues to the age of the barn. In the era before 1790, nails were entirely hand-forged, giving them a characteristically rough look. In this barn, workers found mainly cut nails with hand-forged heads. These helped date the building in the period 1790 to 1830. After 1830, machine-cut nails were more common. Some older nails of this type were found to have been used for maintenance.
The roof was left on until the very end to try to keep the frame covered so we don't have any water damage. The whole process of dismantling the building took approximately 2 weeks. The frame was stamped on all the exterior faces. and recorded so that we could document where each timber went back in the framework. Timbers were all stored under tarps and on blocking until we could get to the process of cleaning the timbers and repairing. We had to do repairs on, I think, 5 or 6 posts. They had to put a new foot on the bottom of the post.
Wherever repairs would be visible, the restorers strove to match the character of the original materials and use authentic methods of repair.
This is representative of the early period because everything in the barn is hewn. The braces are all hewn and ribbed out. The rafters are all hewn. I think the hardest part of the job was finding the replacement timbers. The sill work was non-existent. The building had settled into the ground. To find trees that would hew out to a suitable sill timber, in this case they were 9 by 14 by 37 feet long. And that takes a tree that's approximately 20 inches in diameter at 40 feet. And so it was quite a problem. There were some timbers. We found some of the trees down in the ravines next to the lake here. And one of the members of the Historical Association donated the trees. The other sill timbers came out of other barns in the areas that had collapsed. And the owners donated those timbers. I think you'll find that a lot in later barns where the builders would utilize whatever was available. And so in some barns you can go in and you'll see a lot of joinery that doesn't seem to have any purpose, or the empty mortises in places. And if you study the buildings long enough, you can see where that they recycled the timbers out of earlier buildings. And we did the same thing. You set it up on a traditional plinth stone foundation where the sills would have been set on a large stone under the major post location. But most of the older barns would over the years settle into the ground. So in this case we set it on a ballast bed, where in the perimeter of the building we dug a trench and laid crushed stone and then set the plinth stones on that. So it helps drain the water off, and the building should be quite stable over the years. Oh, the raising itself was fairly traditional. We utilized the gin pole as a safety measure. It also helps carry some of the load when we're raising the bents. The gin pole itself is just a large tree that was secured in the middle of the building, and block and tackles run off that. I think it was quite an experience for people to become directly involved and to get some realization of how these buildings actually went up. I think it kind of tied people to the building and to the history of this a lot more than it would have if we'd done a mechanical raising. I think a lot of the people, when they look back over the years, they'll tend to realize more what this meant to them. And here you can see the sweat that went into this. And I think that was part of what people got to see.
Okay, everybody on the frame for a picture.
the next 30 years, we'll see the majority of our 19th century buildings gone. You know, my guess now is they're half gone right now. 100 years ago, back in the 1870s, there was over 230,000 farms in New York State, and there had to be at least one barn at every farm. And today, there's about 35,000 farms, and so it's you know, a huge decline, and the buildings are declining with them.
As pioneer barns disappear from the landscape, they take with them a tangible link to the past, to the people who cleared the land, hewed the timber, and put down roots. A barn is a storehouse of information about the past. Just as so many early farm buildings were moved and adapted to changes in agriculture, so too was this one. Today, it's once again a working building on the grounds of the Genoa Historical Association. The barn serves as a museum of the area's pioneer farming tradition, connecting us to people whose way of life has passed on, but whose values endure.